first question is, as an artist, what would you say is the best road to take to get started in video games?
Wow, you know, the path to getting in the video game industry 20 years ago was pretty easy. And nowadays, I would say, has become, just in the short span of 2 decades, really quite complex. The good news is that I think there's still lots of really great opportunities in this business. It's one of the fastest growing industries in the world still. And the segment that we happen to be in, the online games business, is by far the segment that has you know, the lion's share of the growth in the games industry. So as an artist, you know, the good news again is that there are schools and methods to get a formal education and ways to prove that you're a good artist. That's things like a portfolio, whether you're a concept artist, whether you're a 3D modeler, whether you do work in video production, you know, whether you animate skeletons. All those specialties are in great demand in our industry. In particular, at NCSoft, I would say concept artists and animators. So if you actually are qualified, please do apply. But really, industry-wide, the art demands in our industry are going up and up very, very quickly. And so I think there's just some really great opportunities, but you do have to be able to prove it with a good portfolio.
Absolutely. We totally need artists all the time. If you are a good artist, you should. It's actually probably pretty easy to get into the video game industry. Question number 2. What have you learned from designing Tabula Rasa, and what would you do differently in your next game?
Well, you know, it's interesting, as I'm sure a lot of people understand, the team that it requires to make one of these large, you know, massively multiplayer online games is huge. I mean, here in Austin, we have 70 or 80 folks, and worldwide, 120, 150 people working on this one title. And so, by all means, you know, each of those people, we actually try to make sure that they have the most creative input on the product as possible. And there's so during that design process, while, you know, my job has been to kind of set the goalposts of the large principal aspects of the vision, there are definitely surprises along the journey even for me. And so I think one of the very biggest successes in Tabula Rasa is the combat system. And I would actually say Paul Sage, who's back there a few rows behind me, he's waving his hand there right now. Paul Sage actually probably deserves the you know, the lion's share of the credit for the combat system. Although I know that a lot of his underlings, Michael Moore among others, you know, really kind of spearheaded the vision and the implementation of that. And actually, the combat system is the most successful feature in Tabula Rasa, which is I think great news, especially for a game with my name attached to it. Because I think if you look at the Ultima series, the combat systems weren't my strong suit. And so I'm really as proud as ever that that has turned out to be, I think, the most powerful feature of the game.
Excellent. Now this is a Tabula Rasa very specific question. How often will character customization be updated as new content?
Well, that's actually a good question, and I'm going to take a stab at the answer, although this is only semi-educated estimate. So the character customization is something that we continue to expand. Like, for example, even here in just the wee weeks before launch, a bunch of new stuff was added. For example, a bunch of facial customizations, beards and facial hair, that sort of thing, eyeglasses, eye patches, that sort of activity. And I know shortly after launch, we have a bunch of new, highest level new customizations coming online too. And so it will continue to be expanded, but the precise ways it will be expanded, you know, frankly, I'm not particularly savvy on the specifics myself.
He just says more and they do it. Okay, I can answer this question. They want to know if you ever play the game, really, or if you just, you know.
And so what is your estimation? So April, what is your estimation of how often I am in the live public build of the game?
More than any person I know.
Yeah.
He is constantly in game. He shows up to events, pantless, as a matter of fact. Thank you for wearing pants tonight, by the way. I appreciate that.
No problem, my pleasure. But no, that's true. I actually try to make sure that I'm in the game every day. I'm usually in multiple times per day. I also try to announce that I'm in the game so that everybody knows that I'm there, knows that we're paying attention, knows they have somebody they can talk to. I actually tell everybody when I get in, not only to announce that I'm present, but I tell them to /add friend British, which puts me on their friends list, so they actually can tell when I log in the game. So the instant I'm in, they know it, and of course that means they can also do /tell British immediately, and so I get war mailed with comments and concerns from people. But that's why I'm there. I mean, the reason why I'm in the game is because I want to see how it's operating. I want to see how people, what things are working, what things are breaking. That's the only way we can successfully bring this game to conclusion. And so I think it's very, very important that the whole team is in, really, frankly, but especially myself. I try to be in there every day, and of course, post-launch, I'll try to keep up that same level of regiment. But you know, over the years, that will probably become difficult. But at least you know, for the first 3 to 6 months, I hope to be in there basically daily.
What is your favorite species or race in the game?
That's interesting. The Forians are probably, if you're talking about race, the Forians are probably my favorite race in that they've had a very interesting history. For the internal to the team, they remember the Amphibians, the loved and hated Amphibians, which happen to have also been a personal favorite. But as they evolved into Forians, they've still remained one of my favorites. As far as creatures in the game, boy, that's really tough. But I would probably say the Bane Striders, which I think are the most interesting opponent. Maybe the Stalkers actually are working a little better and are probably my favorite to drop on the unsuspecting players at the moment. That's because there's a bug with the Striders. But once the Striders reach full stride, so to speak, they'll come back online as my favorite.
TR seems ripe for global scale war. What can we expect, if anything, in terms of large scale PvP? Would this be done by rival factions, being character creation, etc.?
So PvP is one of the features that I think you'll see at launch will be very solid, but will have the greatest opportunity for growth through the first year of the live product. What's interesting about Tabula Rasa is we really designed it to be what I'll call a squad level activity game, but I've been very surprised how well it holds up to larger groups or larger battles than I anticipated. Especially if you look around at the control points, these outposts with these control points that people tend to fight over in the game. Those are some pretty intricate, I think amazingly large, interesting battles that go on, and it'll be interesting to see how that grows into even ever larger forms of battling. But it's unclear exactly how big a scale they'll reach.
And the last question is actually not about TR. It says, what was your inspiration for Ultima 4?
That's actually a very interesting question, and one I haven't been asked in a decade or so, really. But Ultima 4 for me is probably my most important game in my history of making games. And the inspiration really came in this way. If you look at the prequels, or the predecessors to Ultima 4, Ultimas 1, 2, 3, and even Akaliva before that, they really were Richard Garriott learns to write a computer game. And you know, if you look at them, like the first couple of games were in BASIC. Ultima 2 was my first assembly language program, so it was pretty clunky. So Ultima 3 being the second assembly language program I wrote was code-wise much better structured. But those were really games just learning how to put things physically together. The fiction for the games were very loose. They tended to be things I plagiarized out of other books and movies all over the board. And Ultima 4 was the first time I really sat down to really craft my own reality from scratch. So the world of Britannia was born. And in addition, it was also a time when fantasy gaming was being heavily criticized, you might say, by what I will kindly describe as religious right-wing zealots. And that would include criticism of me, you know, where in fact on my door, at my office door still says Prince of Darkness. And my favorite quote about myself was when somebody wrote up something, they called me the satanic perverter of America's youth. And that came after Ultima 3, with a nice Exodus demon on the cover. And so Ultima 4 was really kind of a reaction to a lot of these things happening in my life, including the first Ultimas I wrote literally while living in my parents' house, and my computer was in my closet of my bedroom. And so Ultima 4 was when I got out on my own. I was like rejecting the parents. I was being heavily criticized. I kind of finally come of age as a game maker, and I really started to pay a great deal of attention to that content. And so I wanted to create a game that had a message inside of it, or a gameplay that really forced the character to think about how they were playing the game, not to try to teach anything or tell any you know, moralistic principles, but rather to create a game that was more interesting, because I thought that go kill the big evil wizard, I've kind of done that 4 times. And And so I was very pleased with it. But I was really worried when I was producing Ultima 4 that the game would fail utterly. I mean, I sincerely believed there was good odds players would reject it. And instead, it became the first #1 best-selling game in the series, so it put me on the map.